US President Donald Trump has threatened to remove Harvard University's tax-exempt status if it refuses to comply with demands for greater government oversight. It's the latest White House push for control of US universities amid what it claims is uncontrolled anti-Semitism on campus. Trump's opponents say the move is an attack on free speech. The president's latest threat comes less than 24 hours after Harvard lost more than $2 billion in federal funding for rejecting his demands. Those demands include an end to diversity, equity and inclusion programs, discipline for student protesters, reform of international student admissions and an audit to ensure what he calls a range of viewpoints in admissions and staffing. Harvard says it will not surrender its independence nor relinquish its constitutional rights, and that no government should dictate what private universities can teach, whom they can admit and hire, and which areas of study and inquiry they can pursue. Well, our Washington team has been out talking to students and hearing what they think about the Trump administration's demands.
I think it's ridiculous. I don't think any president should be dictating what private universities do or teach, or how they admit students, or how they hire faculty.
Research universities like this one do important research for medicine and things like that, and cutting away from that because of petty reasons or political reasons is, we know what that is,
But it's quite disconcerting that they can kind of unilaterally cut funding based off of political affiliation.
I think universities are so often so concerned with legacy, but right now, by bending to the whims of this current president who will be out in 4 years, you are completely foregoing that legacy, and the people won't forget.
Straight to our Washington Bureau Chief, Ines Pohl. Welcome, Ines. Tell us more about what Donald Trump wants from Harvard and about Harvard's response.
Right, so the Trump administration basically pushed Harvard to make some major changes, like cutting diversity programs, banning masks at protests on campus, and shifting to a merit-based admissions. So Harvard's president, Alan M. Gardner, he stood really firm and said that Harvard University wouldn't compromise their independence or their rights. And as a result, the Trump administration quickly froze over $2 billion in grants and contracts for Harvard, really only a couple of hours after the president put out this statement.
So that's $2 billion, that's a lot of money. What would a cut like that mean for Harvard?
Indeed, it's a lot of money even for a rich university like Harvard. They have a total budget of over $5 billion, but $2 million, of course, is a big chunk of that, if I might say that. So it could mean, for example, less financial aid for students. It could mean cuts to academic programs, and also, of course, fewer faculty positions. I mean, Harvard has one of the biggest endowments in this country, and this might cushion the blow a little bit, but such a significant cut, of course, would really still challenge the quality of education and resources they provide and what they are, of course, known for.
Harvard is not the only university this administration has been targeting. How have others reacted to the Trump administration's demands?
Differently, you know, other major universities, some have responded to the administration with resistance, and others more with adaptation. But it is interesting that Harvard's stance really sparked a new conversation. For example, Columbia's acting president, Claire Shipman, and Columbia, of course, was one of the first universities which was targeted by the Trump administration. She said after the president of the Harvard University put out this note, she said that the importance of discussing the values of higher education is more important than ever. You know, it's important for our international audience to understand that private donors play a really vital role here in the United States, in the Ivy League area. because they are funding these Ivy League schools. So the real test really will be how these donors will be defending free speech by compensating potential funding cuts which might happen. So the cultural debate definitely here in the United States is heating up at university campus.
Okay, thanks for that, Ines. Ines Pohl in Washington. Let's get into this with Jonathan Jacoby. He's National Director of the Nexus project. That's a non-profit organisation set up to fight anti-Semitism and to uphold democracy and free speech. Welcome to DW. I've got a headline for you, which I'm going to read and then ask for your comments. So here we have: massively rich elitist institution stands to lose billions in government handouts because of its anti-Semitic woke behaviour. Pick that apart for us and tell us why, or indeed whether, people should care.
Well, people should care because the government is weaponizing the issue of anti-Semitism in order to further its efforts to undermine democratic institutions, and in this case, higher education, and that's a problem.
You see Harvard being undermined by this rule, as I say, a massively wealthy institution which has more money than some small countries. Again, why should we care?
Well, we should care because the money is being put to good use. The money is used for scientific research to help cure diseases. The money is being used to educate our students. The money is being used for scholarships for disadvantaged students. The money is being used to train teachers. The money is not just sitting there. The money is being used to help this country be a strong, democratic country.
Is there anything in what President Trump is proposing in these impositions on Harvard and other universities, is there anything that you would keep?
No, nothing. His agenda has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. His agenda is what he said it was. He said his agenda is for viewpoint diversity, which means getting his viewpoint across. His agenda is for changing the hiring and the admissions process. It has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. And he also wants to keep foreign students out. And my parents are immigrants. This country is better because my parents moved here, because I live here, because my community lives here. And the idea of keeping immigrants out is an anathema.
Columbia University lost 2 presidents over the supposed anti-Semitism issue, even though it ultimately capitulated to White House demands for increased federal oversight. So what do you think Harvard's next move should be?
Harvard, I think Harvard made the right move. Let me say one thing about the anti-Semitism issue. It's true that there was some anti-Semitism during some of these campus protests, and that anti-Semitism should be dealt with in the way that a university deals with issues and problems on its campus. There was vandalism. The vandals should be punished. Most of it was free expression, peaceful protest. The government is using that, weaponizing that, as a pretext for its own agenda.
I'd like to play you a clip of White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt and then get your thoughts.
First, when it comes to Harvard, as I said, the president has been quite clear they must follow federal law. He also wants to see Harvard apologize, and Harvard should apologize for the egregious anti-Semitism that took place on their college campus against Jewish American students.
So, Jonathan Jacoby, it sounds like you don't think Harvard has anything to apologize for.
I think Harvard actually has apologized for those instances where student safety was put at risk. And I think it's not only apologized, but it's taken steps. And if one were to look at what Harvard has done up until now, I think that it's been grappling with this issue and it's done a good job. Do I think that Harvard should apologize to the American Jewish community? I think that's crazy. The American Jewish community has been embraced by Harvard. It has a vibrant Jewish community. I know many of the professors there. I know what I studied when I was there. And I think that the president should apologize to Harvard for what he's trying to do.
OK. The stated goal of removing anti-Semitism from America's universities, that's the headline of these Trump activities. Is it necessary, and how better could it be achieved?
We put together a guide for universities for identifying anti-Semitism in campus protests. They can use that guide. They can look for instances of anti-Semitism. Then they can do educational activities, which is what a university is all about. Perhaps there are some steps that they can be made. There's some punitive measures when the law is broken or when regulations are in some way broken. The universities are set up to do that. And also I want to say that universities are places where we learn, where we exchange ideas, where we have difficult conversations. The most important thing for Harvard and the universities to do is to engage in those conversations, teach people. That's the most important thing.
OK, so you mentioned earlier that these moves actually run the risk of damaging the cause of anti-Semitism. Just expand on that for us.
First of all, one has to look at the source of anti-Semitism. The greatest source of anti-Semitism in this country comes from the far right, comes from the white nationalist movement, comes from even neo-Nazis that we have in this country. And the most important thing that we can do is to rid ourselves of those people who are right now, some people who are even in government who have those points of view. They have every right to have those points of view. It's a democratic country. There's free speech. But we don't want them in government, and we don't want them trying to regulate our universities. And then I think, Jews have been safer and more prosperous in this country and wherever there are democracies because they live in an open society and because we have relationships with other minority groups and vulnerable populations, and we want to enhance those things. And if you weaponize anti-Semitism, if you use anti-Semitism as a pretext for breaking up those coalitions, for undermining democratic and higher education institutions, then you're going to be hurting the very thing that's kept us safe.
OK, so seeking to control America's universities, this is just the latest Trump move, which has also seen him sue media organisations, target migrants and seek to overturn elections. Is it too much to say that the United States is moving towards authoritarianism?
It's too much to say that we can't stop it. That's what I would say. There are those who want to move it in that direction. I think you're familiar with others in other countries who are trying to move it in that direction. And our task is to stop them. And specifically, our task is to take the weapon of anti-Semitism out of their hands so that they can't exploit Jewish concerns and Jewish fears in service of their political ends.
Good talking to you. Thank you for joining us. Jonathan Jacoby from the Nexus Project.
Thanks so much for having me.